Quickly before this video starts, I am live on Twitch as this video goes live as well, so if you want to come stop by, you know where to find me. Link on screen, in the description, in the comments, and in your walls. Also, because I forgot to say it, I have a Discord server now, so if you want to come see my dogs or something, link in the description. Thank you. Reinhardt, the poster child of tank. Not only is he my most played tank out of the entire cast, he's also got by far my favorite cinematic that Blizzard has ever released. He's been the face of many a meta since Overwatch 1, but this streak is on a decline. Reinhardt is Overwatch's shield, but he's cracking, so let's talk about it. And you know how it works by now. Balance history first, game design talk later, skip ahead if you so please. Compared to the other characters that I've done, Rein doesn't really get changed that much. His first change was a full year after release, where how high Shatter climbs got nerfed because this thing would genuinely scale walls and somehow slap you onto the ground, even though you were a solid 4 faras above Rein. He didn't get any notable changes until over a year later, where Shatter was thrown back into the workshop. This change up on how Shatter works was really needed because it was so dumb. You'd stun people even if it was blocked by a shield just because of how the wave traveled. Rein wasn't touched for pretty much another year until he got his new passive Steadfast, reducing all knockback by 30%. Sound familiar? In and around late 2019, Blizzard wanted to reduce the strength of shields because of certain individuals who I won't name, but Rein was thrown into the mix. His shield AP got lowered, but he also got the move speed debuff while shielding lowered, along with Steadfast getting an increase to 50% from 30%, which was immediately reverted a few months later. The final change Rein received in Overwatch 1 was arguably his biggest yet. Hammer damage getting increased to 85 and base armor being increased to 250. This armor change later got reverted, but the hammer damage stayed, which I loved since it meant I could play even more like an idiot than I already did. Especially thanks to the critical hit thing they added to Shatter, one-shotting someone with a bonk will never not be funny. Like all tanks moving into 5v5, Reinhardt got a couple changes to help him adjust. Steadfast was removed thanks to the new tank passive that we had, along with his shield health being reduced down to 1200. Charge was changed to be way more controllable, along with getting a cancel, and Fire Strike went through mitosis and received an extra charge. After the release of the game, Reinhardt went another year without ever being touched. Shatter got the crit damage lowered and the stun time increased, along with Fire Strike getting buffed back to 100 damage, and he only got minor changes after that, things like to his HP and shield health, until another year later had passed since his last big set of changes. Hammer damage got increased to 100, charge slam damage increased, Shatter got the increased damage change reverted, but this was undocumented for some reason. Why, Blizzard? There's only been 3 changes since then: a buff to Fire Strike damage, a buff to his armor, and finally Shatter getting its duration brought back down to 3 seconds alongside getting a larger radius. Getting into the design of Reinhardt in Overwatch 1, well, he's what you would expect a tank to be. He's slow, short range, can take a hit, can protect his allies, and naturally once he gets up close to you, that is some big damage that he can dish out. There's no problems here really. And that is pretty much how he's always been, with a few odd differences here and there, but he's been pretty consistent throughout his time in Overwatch. But because of this, along with many shatter bugs, and good god there are so many shatter bugs, he didn't see too much play in early Overwatch. I mean, in 2016 he had a bit of a short stint with Ana and Quad Tank. Then again he had that in 2018, except it was Moira this time, but those were relatively short-lived, at least in comparison to most Overwatch metas. And we don't talk about 2017 Reinhardt. And that is pretty much the story with Rein. He's always been a simple tank who excels in those brawly type of compositions. But most of those brawly type of comps didn't ever last for too long, until one certain character was released. Alright, look, lads, this video is about Rein. I'm not going to be getting too deep into GOATs or else we'll be here all day. Pretty much, 3 tanks, 3 supports who all only had one goal in mind: run at you as fast as they can and beat you up. Now, I never quite got to experience what playing Rein during GOAT was like because I was a projectile DPS player, which means I was in brig jail for a full year. But pretty much it could have been boiled down into either one of 2 things. You were either the king of the world, or you were being thrown around like a basketball as if Aumine had suddenly been dropped into Overwatch. And this tidbit is where Rein ran into his first set of issues that weren't just a meta not suiting him, or Shatter refusing to shatter. You were going to be abused by the enemy team. Stuns, knockbacks, slows, all of these things were all going to be stacked onto you as Rein, because unless you're a crackhead, you are the one thing between the enemy team and your team. You are the first target they see. And Rein was pretty much the reason why we got 2 different sets of changes during Overwatch. One of them was a mass cut down in hard CC, although that wasn't until 2020. In 2019, after GOAT had been pretty much phased out of the meta, Reinhardt got his new Steadfast passive. which only had the one goal of helping him out so that he would stop being thrown around like a bouncy ball. And it did work pretty well, though he was pretty much just entirely dropped because of double shield entering the meta. And with even further help needed, along with Blizzard going for that mass shield cut down, well, he got another buff to the steadfast passive, and I think you're all starting to see a bit of a pattern here. To finish off Overwatch 1 Reinhardt, I'd say his strongest state was around December 2020 to April 2021, because of the armor and hammer change that he got. He just got even better at running people down. But there's one issue I have with the change they made here that I'll get into in just a second. But I will say that adding a critical hit to the Shatter was just hilarious. This is the best change they've ever made. But buffing his armor and the fact that it got nerfed back down highlights a bit of a problem Rein can end up having, being that if he's ever too survivable, we're gonna have issues. But that's more of a global character problem. If anyone becomes too hard to kill, we have issues. So in the shift from 6v6 to 5v5, obviously Reinhardt was gonna need some help, since out of the entire roster, he was one of the tanks who relied the most on his off-tank to keep things going. So what did he get? More HP? Nice. Solid. More fire strikes? I mean, sure, I guess. Charges more controllable and cancelable? Okay, that's actually pretty good. But really, he didn't get much changed and was just kind of thrown in. When I was playing him in the beta, I was having the time of my life, just because charge enabled even more tomfoolery, but overall, the shift was not amazing for Rein. But he certainly wasn't suffering or anything. But throughout Overwatch 2, he's never had his moment on the meta. He had a brief moment kind of around Season 3 and Season 4 where he was actually doing pretty strong, but he's never been a scourge in the way that Orisa, Mauga, or Zarya have been in the past. And that's not really possible for him, and given the nature of his kit and how Overwatch 2 plays out, teams are a lot more spaced out and maps are a lot more open. It's not like in Overwatch 1, where both teams would be neat little balls of ult charge. And there's also the existence of a second tank, which leads me to my next point. Reinhardt is an inherently needy and greedy tank. He's an investment, a high risk and a high reward type of character. But because he's going to be the enemy team's main focus, before, during, and after his approach, he needed help from his other tank. Typically a Zarya or occasionally a D.Va, no matter if it's pre or post Rolock back in Overwatch 1. He needs all the healing he can get, and no Reinhardt player is going to complain about having a Lucio on his team so that he actually has a speed boost to close that gap faster. And while he relies the least on DPS, there's certainly a difference in the pressure that Rein will feel when his DPS apply pressure versus when they don't, but that's all tanks realistically. The big thing is that Rein needed a lot of support, whether protection or healing, in order to make the most out of his kit. When you look at the various times he's been in meta, you see it in full swing. Quad tank and goats were all just throw the heals everywhere, Rein's gonna catch some of them anyway. His need for investment and a team playing around him, along with the fact that you are always the enemy team's punching bag, no matter the number on that steadfast passive, means that he is miserable to play sometimes. But this can't really change, because if you make Reinhardt less team reliant, he only gets stronger with his team. This is the nature of a fully melee character like Rein. You're at the mercy of the enemy team until you get into your advantage states of being in their faces, but that's the issue with Rein. This man struggles to get into the enemy's face, even if he has a Lucio nowadays. Before I talk about the present day Reinhardt, we need to talk about Overwatch 2 and the tanks. Specifically, just the tank passive. So say what you want about the role passives, I kind of need to make a full-on video about those if I'm ever going to get into that topic. But when Overwatch 2 launched, all the tanks universally were granted Reinhardt's steadfast passive. 30% knockback resistance to everyone. Now there was a reason that Rein had this passive to begin with. He's fully melee, not too mobile, and naturally because he's leading the charge, the enemy team is going to have their entire focus on him 9 times out of 10. It was a perfectly reasonable passive to give him because if you booped him away, well, he couldn't do anything about it. But giving it to the other tanks? Like D.Va? Winston? Even Orisa, the character immune to CC? You can certainly argue that it was needed to help them out because there's only going to be one tank now and obviously there's going to be a lot more focus on them, and that's actually fair enough. But I do think that Reinhardt really should have gotten a stronger version of the passive, considering it was originally made with him in mind. And as I was writing the script, tanks got a buff to their passive. I'm not getting into the headshot thing, so we're just going to focus on the fact that the steadfast portion got buffed up to 50% knockback resistance. Blizzard, you've already tried this once, and you reverted it within 3 months. I know that sounds like quite a long time, but in Blizzard standard time, that's actually pretty fast. So we've already tried this once, and it was already too strong on the character who it was intentionally made for. How do you think it's gonna work when we give it to Sigma? Like, I don't... Oh god. The tank passive took away a strength that was previously exclusive to Rein and just gave it to everyone, and Rein got nothing in exchange. He's just getting shafted, really. And all of this brings us to the current present day Rein, who quite honestly is just struggling. But in comparison to the other characters that I've covered, I don't think he needs to be changed whatsoever. Fundamentally, his kit is really strong. It's just simply that the current meta, along with the Overwatch 2 landscape, just being very anti-Rein overall. I mean, if you give Rein some buffs, we're going to end up with a situation where Rein is just way too strong and no one's going to like that, because when a character's too strong, of course they're not fun to play against. Granted, he'd simply be overtuned, not overloaded, so it would be easy enough to fix, but it's still a problem, you know? A mix of things floating around at the moment, like Zenyatta Discord Orb just being too strong in Overwatch 2 thanks to the fact that there's only one tank that he has to put it on, Orisa being Orisa, Mauga being Mauga, and of course the new DPS passive removing 20% of the resources that Reinhardt so desperately needs off his teammates. It's just not really a good situation for him. And of course, the counter-swap watch meta of tank, that's just miserable for Rein. Even if you rock out with a good matchup into the enemy tank as Rein, well, it doesn't matter because once they lose that first fight, they're swapping into an even worse matchup for you. Even if it's more of an even matchup, or something like a Reinhardt mirror, depending on how badly the person in question on the enemy team wants to win, they're just going to immediately swap to Orisa and make your day a living hell. So how do you fix this? I think just bringing down the general strength of the Flavor of the Month picks would be the main way to go about it. However, when we get to a stage where tank matchups are all pretty balanced, that puts even more emphasis on counter-swapping, which will just make tank even more miserable realistically. So if I'm being honest with you, I don't know how to fix tank just as... That's not on me to try and give an opinion on how to fix it. That's not happening. And before I finish this off, let's talk about Mirrorwatch Rein, since in my last video that featured Mirrorwatch characters, people were asking for my own thoughts on them and if they were actually added to the main game. So why not? Starting with his passive, Frenzy, giving increased attack speed on swings is really fun, though with this hammer doing 100 per swing now, this would be a little too much if it were to actually be added. As for Shatter, this is just worse Shatter, let's be real. But his shield was something that I found really interesting. Giving it a BAP window effect does encourage your team to play around you a little bit more, and which we all know Rein desperately needs, but there was a little extra bit that Gecko mentioned when I was playing it on stream that's fun for the mode, but would be outrageous in an actual game. Rein getting move speed on his barrier being destroyed. So ignoring how it encourages a mismanagement of a resource, just look at it from the enemy perspective. You need to shoot Rein's shield so that you can start damaging his team, and also to remove that window effect so that you take less damage. But you don't want to fully destroy it, or now you have a Rein sprinting at you at Mach 4, so you're stuck in a catch-22 situation. You need to destroy the shield so that you can damage his team and take even less damage from the amplification they now get, but you also don't want to destroy it because that'll let Rein overcome his weakness of needing to close the gap when he normally has no solid movement options by himself. I think Mirrorwatch Rein is fun, but if anything beyond the attack speed was added to his main kit, I'd have to wonder what the hell is in the dev's food. And that's Reinhardt. In my opinion, he's one of the best designed tanks in the game. He's got clear strengths, clear weaknesses, both of which can be worked around with solid team play. But in the modern era of Overwatch, well, he's not doing too hot whatsoever. I mean, when I was getting footage for this, I was actually losing my mind. I was getting shot at from angles that I didn't even know about, made even worse realistically by the fact that when I start streaming, I turn into an idiot. I'm about to do something. Drop the wall, drop the wall, drop the wall, drop the wall. So stream's ending. None of you saw anything. No one saw anything. Streams, Sonny's gone. We're done. That's my webcam. That's not what I meant to click. So despite how bad Reinhardt is in the current landscape, I can only pray that he eventually receives some kind of love. Not in the form of a buff or whatever, because like I said, I don't think he needs it. I just want him to have his moment to shine, because God, I'm tired of Orisa. And like I said at the start of this video, I am live on Twitch as this video goes live, so if you want to come stop by and tell me your Reinhardt thoughts there, well, by all means, feel free. Or if you just want to insult me for not having a good opinion on Rein, I mean, I can't stop you, I guess, so go ahead. And now, sure look, if you're still here, go on, drop a like, drop a sub, all that YouTube stuff, and I'll talk to you next time, lads.